再讲一下那个，好，下面是心是转为道用。
Now we are going to talk about bringing prosperity onto the path. Previously, we've already talked about bringing decline onto the path. Some people may wish to have prosperity, and for those of you who wish for prosperity, you may think that, well, why do I need to bring prosperity onto the path? Yes, suffering, I understand that we need to transform them onto the path of enlightenment, but in terms of prosperity and wealth and talent and status and all of those, why do we need to transform them onto the path of enlightenment then? Because they can be of a great adversity and enemy for our practice. That is why. So over here it says that though I may eminently acclaimed, be revered by many beings and possess a fortune resembling Vaishvaranas, it is the practice of the Bodhisattva to remain without arrogance, having seen how the glory and riches of this existence are pointless. Though I may possess abundance in perfect status and appearance and dominion and resources, though I am renowned in all directions through many beings, and though many beings bow their heads towards me with respect and veneration, though I have obtained wealth and enjoyment similar to the king Vaishvarana. Nowadays, it seems that people with a little bit of wealth and appearance and so on and so forth, they would get quite arrogant. The other day, a Kempo told me that some monastics who had never had power before, now it seems that they're intoxicated of being a supervisor or a director of the Sangha. Don't even mention about becoming a director, chief of a bureau, of maybe being a chief secretary and so on, or maybe abbot or a chant leader. That was a joke. Now the Chopin is a bit embarrassed. Well, the Chopin is actually not arrogant. He's quite humble indeed. Anyhow, here it says that with wealth, with people with wealth, they would then dress up. They would even walk, their deportments would be different, and people would see that very clearly. And people would say that, well, this person has some money, and that's why this person is so arrogant. Maybe that one has a lot of status, and that is why. Well, people can see that very clearly. There are times that people are renowned in they're renowned in all directions, and many beings would bow their heads towards them with respect and veneration, and the ones with lots of enjoyment similar to King Vaishvarana. King Vaishvarana is so much more richer than Jack Ma. Nowadays we don't even hear the name of Jack Ma anymore. Because I see that all the glory and riches of this existence flicker like lightning, vacillate like dewdrops on the tip of a grass blade, and are as essenceless as a water bubble. And because of realizing that such phenomena are to be discarded like the skin of a snake, I will remain without arrogance and haughtiness. This is the way in which all bodhisattvas bring prosperity onto the path. Whatever we have, it seems that in mundane beings, if they were to purchase a good car, they would brag about it in front of the others. If one were to be knowledgeable in certain areas, they would speak, they would go on and on about it in front of the others. Similarly goes with good clothing and anything you own. I just remember that when I was little, buying a new pair of pants would be something that make me want to show off to the others. And sometimes I think people would pretend that they have wealth or they have some resources. For example, they would put some paper in their wallet so that their wallet look really fat and to pretend they are wealthy. But you should know that all of those things in this world, they're like a flicker, they're like lightning, and they're like a water bubble. Whatever kinds of rich people, or however rich they could be, especially a few years ago, nowadays their status completely changed. I think you're quite aware of it. And from a sutra, it says that you should not generate a mental state where you think I'm especially noble and supremely important. This infatuation is the root of all carelessness. According to a letter to a friend, he says that arrogance based on prestige, beauty, learning, youth, and great authority, behold it as your enemy. If, as a monastic, especially a practitioner, you shouldn't care about any of this stated above. Let it be your beauty, your disposition, your talent and youth, any of those. So in Tibet, we would say that since an old dog would not live for over 9 years, it is not necessary for such an old dog to make everyone as an enemy. According to the way of the Bodhisattva, it says that full of negative emotion of arrogance, we will be brought down to the lower realms. The arrogant ones would then be reborn in lower realms. After all the happy gatherings disperse, then they would simply be reborn as the others' food as well as servants. One may be healthy, possess all enjoyments, have perfect qualities in terms of status and appearance, learnedness and righteousness, and be endowed with vast happiness in body and mind. But if, because of this, one has become arrogant and infatuated with oneself, looks down on others, and falls under the power of wantingness to do various non-dharmic activity, then faults such as carelessness and suffering will be produced in this life. It seems that we can observe it around ourselves as well. We see that there are people around those directors or supervisors. They would be very arrogant whenever they have an opportunity, but after a while, when there is a change of the power or positions, then they could be at a very poor position. At my age, I've seen too much. Whomsoever has a bit of arrogance, after a while, we can see that the arrogant people do not have a good ending. It doesn't matter about your appearance and your disposition and smartness and learnedness and so on and so forth. According to Precious Garland of the Middle Way, states the following: although you may possess a perfection similar to a god, do not become arrogant. I really like this particular teaching over here. In the previous part, we've learned that even if you were to be reborn as a hungry ghost, you should not be fearful. At times, when we're at the lowest of the lows in our life, it is not completely hopeless. We should not be fearful. At the times that we possess all the perfection similar to a god, do not become arrogant. Even when you're at the highest of the highs, do not be arrogant. In our region, we have a singer who was quite well known, and after he got popular for a while, he stopped becoming popular and he stopped his throat, lost some of the voice. So people started teasing him by saying that, well, look at you now, you can't sing very well now, and your status definitely fell. And he said that, well, it is just that my voice doesn't work as how I used to. When we look at the planes, it could fly till such height and it would still fall from the sky. I am simply I'm simply a singer, and what's there for me to be afraid of to fall from that status? In the teaching from the way of the Bodhisattva, it says, in order that I may cause the Buddha's heart to rejoice, I shall from now on be the master of myself and the servant of the world. Accordingly, whatever mundane or dharmic excellence occurs, it should become a conducive circumstance for one's practice, wishing that the same happiness may be bestowed to everyone. One should immediately transform anything into the means to benefit them. It is taught that one should tame one's arrogance and thereafter behave like the lowest of servant of all, bearing everyone high or low on the crown of one's head. And then from Lord Atisha, whenever an attitude of superiority appears, at that time pride should be humbled. He continues, condemn all mental status of conceit, vanity, pride, and arrogance, pacify and tame them, give rise to compassion towards all those inferior, and give up disregard and contempt. Juntunpa also explained, no matter how many qualities you may have, diminish scorn and derision for others. Whenever we look at the great masters, such as Juntunpa, such as Ponsok Rinpoche, they have such great merit, they have such wonderful level of insights and virtue, but they would care for the others. Even to a dog, they would respect and care for them. We should also have such kind of a heart and mind to protect all the other sentient beings. This is the action of a Mahayana practitioner. Then Potawa explained bodhisattvas should subdue their pride, keep a low profile, and act respectfully and with great compassion towards everyone. Even though there were no qualities greater than those of Lord Atisha, he never acted with contempt towards anyone, not even a dog. Moreover, if others look at me with pity, but I nevertheless remain always happy, and there is Dharma in that, otherwise not. I have met lots of great masters, but out of all the wonderful practitioners and masters, I have never met anyone who's like Ponsok Rinpoche, who is so proficient in all the teachings of Sutrayana, Mantrayana, who is perfect in all the mundane and transmundane dharmas, who is well endowed with the compassion of benefiting others. Indeed, he is quite rare and perfect in this world. Ponsok Rinpoche would never even harm human beings, not even an animal, not even a rat. So compare ourselves to the great masters like such. How can we generate even any bit of arrogance at all? Potawa says that when other people look at me with pity, I should nevertheless remain always happy. Then there is Dharma in that, otherwise not. It is only by relying on the sentient beings we can complete the practice of the six perfections. If we were to practice upon the object of rocks and wood and so on, those cannot be the object of the practice of patience or compassion at all. And then Geshe Karakpa said the following: without seizing the role of the superior, embrace the humble role of an inferior. Do not keep thinking, or do not keep going forward or upholding or seizing the role of a superior. Rather, you should be humble and embrace the role of being inferior. You should rather be low-key and more humble. After study this teaching, though that people over here are not as arrogant compared to the worldly beings, but I'm sure for those of you who have some kinds of qualities and some kinds of talents, I'm sure you still have some arrogance in you. I'm not sure if I do or not, but I know that including some kumpos and kummos, it's very easy for people to generate some arrogance, but such arrogance can be very subtle. Others would be able to see it very easily, but for oneself, it's difficult to recognize it. And then Langrik Tongpa said that when accompanying anyone anywhere, regard yourself as inferior to everyone, and from the core of your heart, respectfully conceive of others as paramount. In the same way, all the sacred forefathers taught through their lifestyles how to practice the Dharma by means of taking a low seat, wearing tattered clothes, and so forth. Their clothing are very simple. They would wear some clothing for years and years. Master Yingguang and great masters such as Mipa Rinpoche, they're not like the worldly beings that would show off their clothing, show off their new clothing to the others. But I think over here is a little bit better. People don't really want to wear the new clothes and show off, but they would keep wearing their old clothing. Make sure you wear your old clothing though. Otherwise, it's going to stink, especially for the male practitioners over here. Maybe you don't have any grasping towards smell, but maybe other people around you do. Within a sangha, if someone do not wash their feet or socks or clothing, after a few days, beings in the desire realm would start to get dirty, and since we're not the beings of the clothing of beings in the desire realm will start getting dirty after a few days of wears, unlike the celestial beings. If you're like a yogi, purposely dressing in such a way, it is not quite necessary, because nowadays buying clothing are quite simple. It's not that difficult. There are people who would buy 4 kilos of ghee without any problem, I'm sure. It's not difficult to buy a piece of new clothes. Do not call him the 4 kilos monk, the monk of 4 kilos. In the same way, all the sacred, moreover, it is said, if you're happy, dedicated toward a joyful assembly. These statements also demonstrate the manner of bringing suffering and happiness onto the path. There is an expression, this is the great joyful oppression, which means that if one knows how to bring happiness onto the path, the occurrence of happiness and bliss will not become the cause for arrogance and so forth. It will become the oppressor of arrogance and a helper for the Dharma. What it means is that to transform happiness onto the path of practice is to oppress or arrogance. I will look further into the Tibetan text to clarify the meaning later. Furthermore, from Gyaltse Tongme himself, although also whatever qualities of learnedness, righteousness, and excellence we Dharma practitioners may possess, if we regard ourselves as paramount and based on pride, look down on those inferior to us, compete with those equal to us, and begrudge our superiors, then the Dharma has not penetrated the vital point. It is just like what Ponso Rinpoche usually would teach us, if what we were to regard paramount to the others, and if we were to look down at our inferior and compete with that who are equal to us and begrudge the superior, then that really shows our practice has failed. Moreover, it matters not where or with whom we keep company. Carry your superiors, your equals, and those below you on the crown of your head. He himself practiced this in this way. In short, what is necessary to understand is that whatever happens, whether prosperity, decline, happiness, or suffering, is like an illusion. And so, when happy, be able to cope with happiness, and when sad, be able to cope with suffering. Otherwise, when slight happiness occurs, one becomes arrogant, and when slight suffering occurs, one becomes discouraged and disheartened. We need to be able to carry the burden of suffering, and we need to be able to forbear happiness. Do not get arrogant when happy, and do not get discouraged and weakened by suffering. Otherwise, when slightest happiness occurs, one becomes arrogant, and when slightest suffering occurs, one becomes discouraged and disheartened. Nothing will be accomplished by such a weakling. Indeed, it's easy to understand and to pay lip service, to parrot these kinds of teachings, but to practice it is very difficult. If we can truly uphold these kinds of teachings into our daily actions, then that would be really wonderful. There are happiness, there are happy moments in life, there are suffering moments. Just like the weather, there are hot weathers and there are cold weathers. As a stable practitioner, whatever occurs in this world would be a cause for happiness. And even if you were to go through happiness and then the other day suffering based on different causes and conditions, if you can tame your mind and to adjust your mental state, that would be really wonderful. And then Potawa said the following: though you may have circled the town 10 times and still have not received any alms, do not become discouraged. If you were to walk around for 10 different cities, different towns, but still cannot find any alms, do not be discouraged. It could happen without the causes and proper causes and conditions. That could happen. If it were to happen to you, do not get discouraged. Though reverence may fall like rain, do not become happy and attached. Whenever there are such wonderful, favorable conditions were to happen to you, such as food and wealth and fame and so on and so forth would fall onto you, you should see them just as the dew on the tip of the blade. They're simply like flash, like lightning. They're simply just like a water bubble. Patrul Rinpoche used to say that because of our very limited perspective, whenever we would see people with a little bit of wealth, we would think that, oh, this person is so wealthy, and that car is really beautiful, this person is really beautiful looking, and we would generate all kinds of admiration. It is really because you do not understand the nature of all phenomena. If you were to truly investigate on the nature of all phenomena, you will be able to see that they are simply impermanent. There is nothing to grasp onto. There is nothing to admire. And similarly, when it comes to suffering, you should view suffering as your companion. You should see that at the time of being the lowest of the lows, when at the times of being most painful, when others started to slander you, to harm you, and so on, that is exactly the time that you should practice. You should engage in actual practice. You have already got whatever you've got in this world. You've sought for it in this world. When you look at the great masters of the past, even after having leprosy, such illness became their causes and conditions. conditions to attain full realization. So whatever you may go through, maybe a breakup, or maybe the loss of your job, and all of those kinds of things, that could be a cause and condition for your realization. And then by Geshe Chakawa, he explained, be patient. Whether there is decline or prosperity, then from ornament of the sutra, at the time of prosperity and at the time of decline, there is no fear of afflictions and suffering. At certain stage, you would be able to see that everything is just like a dream and like an illusion. When you see that the cyclic existence of birth and death is just like entering into a garden, that is the state of realization of a bodhisattva who attained Bhumi. Let it be or not to be, at times of prosperity and at times of decline, there is no fear of affliction and suffering to such kind of bodhisattva. Not so sure when we will be able to attain to such kind of state. It is just like to have a son in your dream, and to have the son, that son in your dream dying. And then when you wake up, you will be able to see that there is no benefit nor harm that's created to you by this child that appeared in your dream. The world is exactly the same. This is the realization, this is the insight that we need to practice up on in our practice. Of course, it could be very difficult right now, but at least we understand it in theory. Whenever we have wealth, do not grasp onto it, do not look down on the others, do not hold on to the wealth, and we need to understand, let it be the emperors or the great masters of the past, whatever kind of great beings that has appeared in the past, the final destination is death. Let it be for the kings or the beggars, that is exactly the same. If we can understand that that's the nature of the world, then it would be very beneficial to our practice. We should stop here.
Sonam dai tanche zubanya thona ni be jana panche jirga nanchi ralong chubai chubam chule ro ro sho